Thank you for attending our first Real Mental Health Break. I'm your host, Shawn Lesser from the Real Mental Health Foundation. Super excited to have our first guest, Ron Diamond, on the show. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then we'll get into the conversation with Ron. So, just a little bit about me. Originally from Brooklyn, New York, grew up in Long Island, went to school at Syracuse University. I did 15 years. I did international institutional equity sales, and then for 16 years, I had co-founded the first impact investing investment bank. So that's what you'll see on my resume. That you'll see on LinkedIn. But specifically, when it comes to mental health, I was in a dark place about 6 months ago. There's more to the story, obviously, but really launched the Real Mental Health Foundation because there's a lot of men, women, and families out there that are suffering, and I think we can help. With this show, it's obviously a serious topic, but we want to also make it interesting and entertaining. So just realize that. With that, I want to introduce our guest for today. I have to say that I actually love this guy, Ron. I love you.
I'm not quite comfortable enough to say that back to you, but I'm very fond of you.
Very fun. We'll take that. So maybe a little bit about your background, Ron. Can you give a little intro on yourself?
Yeah, I've got married for 27 years. I have two beautiful daughters, Zoe, who's 22, just graduated from Michigan, and Bella, who's 19, is a sophomore at Tulane. Live outside of Chicago. Work-wise, I started my career at Drexel Burnham when Drexel existed. When they imploded, I started a hedge fund, sold it, and started investing. And what we currently do is we invest alongside about 100 family offices anywhere between 250 million and 30 billion. We invest in the private market, so that would be private equity, venture capital, real estate, and credit. I sit on a few boards of companies, and I run the family office division, or I'm one of the chairs of family office practice for Tiger 21, and I speak at a lot of these events.
You're being modest. You're kind of to me, you're the king of family offices, Ron. See you everywhere. You're kind of
Yeah, but I've got daughters who tell me I'm not so great. So
well, I'll tell you that you are great. I'd like to talk about a little bit, Ron, how we met, if that's okay. I'd love to hear it from your perspective. I can give my perspective too, but why don't you talk a little bit about that?
you kept calling and calling and calling and calling, and finally I'm like, fine. No, what happened was, I'm sure everybody, you get a lot of people on LinkedIn that, ping in, you just don't know who they are. And I think you'd ping me, and I didn't know you at the time, but I get, hundreds or thousands of, you know,
You're very
diff-
popular.
different, different people calling, but there was something I don't remember what it was. There was something about it which resonated with me, and then and I responded to it, and I'd like to say I respond to every LinkedIn request, but I don't. In an ideal world I would, but I don't. But I responded to it. Something resonated with me, and then I called you. I'm like, "What's this all about?" And then you told me, and then I was fascinated. And based on what your explanation is, which I'm sure you'll go over, I think what your story is remarkable, and I felt it needed to be told and shared. And if I could use a megaphone in the small capacity I can, I'm happy to share that. So that's how we hooked up. And you did call me several times.
No, no, no. I have a different story, Ron. I have a different
All
story. So, when I was going through my stuff and launched, I was going on through some mental health issues, and I decided to launch the Real Mental Health. I reached out on LinkedIn, sent out a LinkedIn to all my contacts, basically said, "Hey, I'm starting on this new journey. I was in a dark place," and then a lot of people came back. A lot of people were super supportive. A lot of guys came back and just wanted to talk. And then how I remember it, Ron, is a little differently, but it's okay. So then I got a message. I got maybe I did hit you a couple times. I don't remember, but I got a message from you that you wanted to talk right away. And I was like, okay, this happens a lot now. Maybe there's some Ron just wants to talk. And then when I got the call, and then we started to talk, you said, "Hey, I want you to come and speak to the group at Tiger 21." So that's my
Your
that's my
your your version your version is correct.
My version just clicked. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what happened from there, and then we get into some more questions. Just your experience, and because we were nervous, we went to Tiger 21 in Chicago. We didn't know what to expect. I got a nice hug from Ron. That was nice. But maybe you can give it a little bit from your perspective.
Well, what was interesting, I mean, Tiger 21, for people who aren't familiar, it's a peer-to-peer group. It's, there's like 1,300 members, and it's usually successful entrepreneurs who've had an exit or two, and there's a minimum net worth requirement. So it's a lot of successful entrepreneurs, and we talk about different things. But a lot of the stuff we talk about is not just investments. We talk about what we're going on in our personal life. And when I was younger, I used to think vulnerability was a weakness, and as I get older, I think it's a strength. So I saw what you did and what you did, and I think it was like the bravest thing I've ever seen. So I decided to have you speak to my Tiger 21 group. And again, I usually go out about a year with speakers, but I bumped you in front of everybody because I thought your story needed to be told, and it really resonated with me. And the issue is that I guess it's true with everybody. Everyone has issues or things that they're dealing with, whether your parents have dementia or your kids or your work wise, or everyone has something. But I wanted you to come on because what you talked about was the rawest possible thing, where you were literally that down. And what was interesting, I had a feeling that it would resonate well, but it resonated extraordinarily well, better than I anticipated. And what happened was, when you opened up and you said kind of what happened, what I saw happening, and we've got a very open group and a vulnerable group, and there's a lot of we share stuff, but I think it opened up another level, because if you're going to be willing to share your darkest of dark days, um, I think really it was liberating, and people really followed that. And I think it was the best talk that I think speaker. You were the best speaker that I've ever had in 4 years at Tiger, and I think it was because it was so impactful. I would just say that you were very authentic,
Hmm.
you were very vulnerable, you were very raw, and as to your title of your company, you were very real. So I think those things are what made it so impactful.
Ron, don't stop. Keep going. You're on a roll. No, I'm joking.
That's all I got for you.
No, that's terrific. And then, sharing the love. It meant a lot to me when you invited us to come, because I really didn't know what we were getting into. And I have to just, I was saying I love you in the beginning, but I really appreciate all the support you've given to us launching this thing just 5 short months ago. So, applaud you for that. Let's talk a little bit about family offices and mental health. How do you see mental health playing out in the family office space? I know that's a general question, but you know, what do
Yeah,
you
but I
think?
don't. Yeah, I want to rephrase the question because it
Sure.
doesn't play out any different in the family office space than it does in AA space, than it does in the YPO space, in any space, because I think everybody deals with this stuff. I think that I've learned a lot about it. My daughter is 22; she'll be 23 in a week, and she went to college during COVID, and she went to University of Michigan. She graduated, but it was very hard. I mean, to go to college, and her sophomore year, she was in her bedroom. And I think about when I was at college, I went to Northwestern. You're out drinking with friends, and it's just a
Sure.
totally different experience. But what I found research when I talked to more and more people, I think something like almost 50% of the people between the ages of 18 and 25 are both depressed and anxious. I think that that's caused by well, a lot of it's caused by social media, and it was
Sure.
exacerbated by COVID. So I think that it hit everybody. It hit everybody in different ways, and we're not wired just to be alone. Period. End of conversation. And we weren't built that way. We were wired. We're a species that's meant to be together in groups. And I think what it did is it caused a lot of people to get out of an area, and it was a surreal environment for 2 years. And I'm not saying that's certainly not the cause of all the depression that existed, but it certainly shined a light on it. And I think now, as a result of that, and as a result of kind of what you're doing, shining a
Hmm.
light on it, it's not a big deal. I could just say, you know what, I pulled my hamstring. I could just as easily say, I've been depressed for like 2 months, whatever. that conversation never would have taken place 20, 30 years ago. And I think mental health, what you're doing is more acceptable, more accepting, and people realize this is real.
Yeah.
And so I think I really applaud what you're doing, and I'm happy to help in any small way that I can.
So just going back in time, because I know you've been in finance for a long time. I think you were at Drexel Burnham, and you told me like how they looked at that. But maybe you can give us a little feel how people looked at it, back then.
At Drexel,
Yes, or some of the other
well,
places.
yeah, I mean, so Drexel was like, I mean, Goldman Sachs on steroids. I mean, it was, at the time, this was in the late '80s. I was there for 2 years, then Drexel imploded, and I was too low in the totem pole to cause it. But I was in the room when I saw, this is 1990, so I'm in the room. Fred Joseph's. I'm a trainee. I'm 24 years old,
Hmm.
and I remember our whole training class. We had a bunch of precocious 24-year-olds, and we're sitting there joking around. And then Fred Joseph, the CEO, comes in, and in like a 5-minute period, he says Drexel Burnham is going bankrupt. And it was a surreal scene. And I'm watching
Yeah.
these people in their 60s and 70s, predominantly men, literally openly weep, cry. And
Hmm.
I could assure you, in 1990 on Wall Street, that didn't happen.
Right.
And what happened was many of the people lost most, and some lost all of their money because they had all their money in Drexel stock. So here I am, my very first job. I'm watching people who are uber successful, people who kind of were my mentors, who found out that all of a sudden their company, their life was turned upside down from an event that was out of their control, and they were now bankrupt or all lost most of all their money. And just the raw emotion of these people, I could remember scents, I could remember who was wearing what, I remember vividly, and that was my first real exposure to like, huh, everybody goes through this, and they used to call them like masters of the universe, people who
Sure.
would pop
Sure.
their chest out and walk around. But I realized that that was my first exposure to realize we all have the same stuff we're going through. It's just people mask it in different ways.
So let me ask you. So no, that was great, super helpful. So looking at yourself now or in your life, getting a little personal, like how do you use that lesson for what you're doing now within your work, within your family, with your friends?
So that's a great question. I think the main thing is, I used to think vulnerability was a weakness, and now I believe it's a strength. One of the things that I learned through Tiger 21, which is an extraordinary organization, is the fact that we're all going through stuff. We all have issues, whether and it could be work related, it could be your spouse, it could be your children, it could be your parents, it could be anything. You have a disease. I mean, so we're all going through it, and I think that as I've grown older, and I think it certainly makes you more empathetic, it makes you more compassionate, it makes you um, not look at the world through your lens, and you're able to try to look at things through the lens of other people. And look, at the end of the day, you draw a circle. Some people's circle is themselves. You could look at,
Hmm.
I'm not going to get political. You look at our former president. That's his world.
Yes.
And then you
Yes.
look at other people. Their circles, their family. And then you look at other people. Their circles, their family, and their close friend. And then there are people who are religious. And then their community. And then the people they work with. So how wide, and the widest is humanity, right? So I'm not quite there yet. I'd love, hopefully, I'll get there one day. But basically, my circle keeps getting larger and larger, and I just kind of realized that, look, at the end of the day, we're here for a blink of an eye, and we're all in this together. And
Hmm.
ego is the biggest hindrance to um, trying to act real, in my opinion.
So, and pin you down a little bit, okay, on the family office side. Do you have a story around mental health that you could share? We don't need names or anything like that, but some kind of experience that you had that said, "Aha, this is how one group handled it. They should have handled it a different way," or anything like that.
There's almost, look, if there was when you're younger, when you graduate college, I graduated from Northwestern. I was working on Wall Street, and I wanted to do really well financially, and I think that's true with many people who are
Sure.
getting into finance. Um, but I've been exposed to, because of who I work with, some of the wealthiest people in the world. And if there were a direct correlation or even a close correlation between wealth and happiness, I would just say try to make as much money as possible. And I'm
Sure.
not saying there's an inverse correlation because there's not, but I will tell you that I have seen there is it doesn't matter where you are socioeconomically, depression hits everybody, right? You can't
Yes.
you can't just buy your way out of it. So what I find is that I know a lot of billion-dollar families who are miserable, where kids
Hmm.
are suing kids, the parents are suing the kids, kids are their parents are suing. There's restraining. I mean, it's just unbelievable, and it's like why? If the whole goal of making money is to either hopefully be philanthropic with it
Hmm.
and be able to live your life and travel a little bit and share with your family, it's not worth it to have those things. So I see a lot of dysfunctional people, but it's not. I don't think it matters if you're. I think having a lot of money helps some things. It makes some things easier, but at the end of the day, it doesn't. I don't think percentage wise of the family offices, less percent of family offices are depressed than
Yeah.
people who are impoverished. I think it's probably pretty close.
Sure, sure. And I could also tell you, just being on this journey, I've had maybe 150 conversations with folks. And I know, like, to see the statistics on depression, anxiety, but almost to the person, this is not 1 degree away. It's half a degrees or 0 degrees away from everybody. Again, that's not scientific, but that's kind of my individual
Yep.
findings. Ron, what question you have for me?
Well, I guess one of the interesting things is you're sharing something that is extraordinarily vulnerable with you shared it with me, and I don't want to share it.
It's
I'd
okay.
rather you share it, but maybe you could talk about what you shared with me because I mean, to me, people will say, it takes a lot of courage to go up and speak in front of a group of people, or it takes a lot of courage to start your own business. That's nothing compared to what you've done. So maybe you could take a minute and talk about kind of your experience.
Sure. So yeah, I'll give the shortened version. So uh, you heard about the resume stuff, businessman, father, 2 kids, all that stuff. So last September, I got really depressed, having trouble eating, having trouble sleeping. Ended up in having basically full mental breakdown. I was in a psych ward. Then I also had some great folks helping me through it. I had a person, Brent Hurd, was basically my mental health sponsor, helping me get through it. Almost like if you think of an alcoholic, they have a sponsor. Brent would help me, talk with me, have chats with me, do different modalities with me. So I also passed. I'm doing this quickly, but I was also in two treatment centers for depression. I was away from my family for about 70 days. They take away your phone, you're in therapy the whole time. And then when I got back about 5 months ago, me and Brent Hurd, who is still is my mental health sponsor supporter, were on the phone, and we were talking, and we were saying, that was serious, that was real. What would happen? And I said to him, yeah, that was real. And you know what? That's what we're going to call it. We're going to call it the real. And he said, what is it? And I said, I don't know, but I know there's a lot of men, women, and families suffering, and I think we can help them. So that's how there's more to the story, but that's kind of how it started, Ron.
Well, I think the message that you're trying to get out is it's I commend you for it, and I think it's uber important, and I think the timing is right because we now are I think where we are in 2023 talking about mental health is something that is perfectly acceptable. And
Sure.
truthfully, I'd love to say it was when I was 23, but it wasn't. It
Yeah.
was taboo, and now it's not. And we're all going through it. So I just really applaud what you're doing, and I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Yeah, and to talk a little bit more what we're doing with the foundation just for a second. So think of what we're doing is really around 4 C's. The first C is conversation. So we're having conversations across the country, across the world. We're getting what we call real talk. So I gave the first real talk, and this might be a little bit new to you, Ron. So what we want to do is have other people give these talks. So think it's like the real is kind of like a TEDx talk. It's great. One guy is telling a story, but how about 10? How about 50? How about 100, right? Think of the domino effect that's going to have coming from all different walks of life. So one is the conversations. The second is what you were talking about with the circles is community. So we're setting up a community now. We roughly have like 300 people. And what do we want to do with the community? Again, back to what you're talking about, Ron, is give folks like a safe place where they can talk about this stuff and not feel judged or anything like that. Just because these kinds of things happen basically to it's a human thing, it happens to everyone. So give them a safe place. What we're also doing is giving them different services that they might use around mental health. And we're also, for example, we're launching the Real Walks, which is basically about community, and it's a bunch of dudes going for a walk, right? It's not complicated. And what we're doing is want to roll out chapters across the country and across the world. So we'll go from conversations to community, then capital, but not capital how you're thinking. What the capital is we want to help. There's other nonprofits that are doing a great job. We want to help to support them. The other thing is to build out this ecosystem within mental health. What we want to do is map out a couple of sides. One, what are the companies, what are the services going on? On the other side, what are investors doing right now within the space? Overlap them in a research report to find out where are the gaps in the space. So that's what we're doing. The conversations goes to the community, goes to capital, and then the big C is change. So Ron, I think you like this. Think of change in two ways. One is intangible, it's the hearts, it's the minds, it's the community. And the other way is tangible, it's around helping to build out the ecosystem.
Well, it's interesting because I remember I was watching. I think it was a TED Talk. I watch a lot of TED Talks. I think it was the founder of Bombas, but I'm not positive. It was some very successful company, and he was just talking about how depressed he was. Well, I mean, he started a uber successful company, but he shined a light on the fact that entrepreneurs, like the percentages of entrepreneurs who have anxiety and who have depression, it's off the chart. I mean, statistically, it's
Yes,
off the
yes,
charts.
yes, yes.
And you deal with people, like in Tiger 21, I'm dealing with uber successful people. So what's interesting is you have this image of this person, he's the top real estate guy, top hedge fund guy, top private equity guy, whatever, and you have an image of them. But then when you break down the wall, and sometimes you have to chip away. But when you do break down the wall, we're all the same. I mean,
Sure.
we're not different. It's just we have better mechanisms to guard it.
Yeah, on that, and I'm guilty of this for a long time in my life. I was in a comparathon, which was almost always comparing myself to other people. And that's never a good game, and there's never a good outcome, and it's always painful. And it's everyone has their stuff, and you've got to kind of play your own ball. You like golf, I think. So that's kind of, but for a long time, I was doing that, and it's really, really
Yeah, and
painful.
I see that a lot. You can't look at the end of the day. There's people are smarter than you, people are richer than you, people are more successful than you. However you determine success, people have better, whatever it is. If you do that, you know that's a really bad place to be in.
Yes,
I think you
yes,
just have to be comfortable with yourself, and I think that what you're doing with shining the spotlight on mental health, it's if I hurt my back really badly, I'm going to go to a doctor. Period. End
sure,
of conversation. If I feel depressed, previously people typically wouldn't talk to somebody or say, "I see a therapist." But now that when kids say like they see therapists, and like my kids in college, they all see
yeah,
therapists, and
yeah.
probably a lot of people our age do too. But it's okay to talk about it. It's not taboo.
Sure, sure, sure. No, I agree with you 100%. So with breaking down the stigma, more people talk about that. That's also what we want to do with the talks. One dude talking with real talks, but how about 10, 20, 100? So
So
Ron,
one
go
other
ahead, Ron.
question I have for you: how can I or your listeners, how can we help you?
Sure, good question. So a couple of things we'll go through each C. So one is the conversations. So we want to have conversations across the country and across the globe. So we're looking for folks that want to step up and like Ron hosted us in Chicago. He also actually got the folks to host us in Atlanta. So if you have a group and you'd like us to speak, we'd love to speak. Two is the community. And you can go to the website. You can join the community. It's for free, right? Or folks that might want to really kind of start a chapter in there. Again, it's a little bit work in progress, but a chapter in their specific location. Three is yes, we're raising money for the nonprofit to get this thing off the ground. So any other help on that way would be terrific.
Great. I'm look at I like all of us. We're all very busy. But when you asked me to do this, I just changed what I was doing, and it was very important for me to be on this because I think what you're doing is I have a lot of respect for you, and I think it's extremely important. And I just have the utmost respect for you and the courage you're showing and the leadership you're showing for this.
You're a kind man, and I go back to, yes, I do love you, Ron. So you can like me
And
a
here's
lot.
I'm not quite there yet. I I I really do like you a lot. Um, I think we could potentially get
We
there,
can
but
just stay there.
I'm
That's all
gonna
right.
let
We can stay there for now. Okay with that.
I'm gonna
Okay with
let
that.
I'm gonna let you be the one to say it first. I don't say it back, and then
Okay.
you're all wondering, do I really like you? I do really
Maybe
like
the
you.
next. I think that might be the next episode. We're going to do the show weekly. We'll come back with Ron's feelings. We're going to do a whole show
Yeah,
on that, Ron.
right now, I I I think you're a
You have a little
wonderful
time.
human being, but I'm not gonna say that I love
That's
you. I
fine.
really like
Okay.
you
Okay. I can live with that. All right.
a lot.
And
I
we
like
like
you a lot.
Okay, and we like everyone a lot that's listened to this. This is our first show, right? Really super that Ron to have you on the first show because you don't know how it's gonna go, man. You know, but we're gonna be doing this every week and having a diverse group of folks chatting. So we'd love you all to come back, and we'd love you all to get real. That was my
Great.
close.
Well, it's been terrific being on the show, and like I said, I'm happy to help spread the word in any way that I can, and I think it's a fabulous cause that you're doing, and maybe our relationship I can get to where you are, but I'm just not there yet.
We'll work on it. Okay. All right, Ron. Let you go. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye bye.
Bye bye.